throughout my time of working in the visual arts, dance always seemed to be connected. It was difficult at first. I did start by taking studies in classical for a short while, and then I found the new dance group, which was very close in their thinking, their output, to what the group I was associated with in Montreal, the Groupe des Automatistes. I just felt at home there and developing new ways of moving, studying Indian dance and African dance, and concentrating on the modern dance. I found this school of Franziska Boas, which seemed very, very close in thinking with what we had developed already in Montreal. She had a fabulous collection of musical instruments from all over the world, and we did some improvisation, jam sessions with those instruments, as well as she did when she would conduct some improvisation classes. Before going to New York, already as a teenager, talking about art forms in many directions, but mainly about painting. And with some friends who were in the same, with the same desires to develop their thinking. And when we met Bourgeois, Paul-Émile Bourgeois was already beginning, that was in 1941, he was already beginning to read and discover André Breton and the Surrealism, and he had read the Château Étoilé, and he was talking to us about this new development in the art world. I would say the visual art world mainly, or maybe I would say more literary art world in France. But we turned it into the visual art world, and eventually had to leave the surrealism because it was bringing painting in a more literary direction, and we wanted it to be strictly visual. I thought, I will dance in the snow. And there I met Jean Paul Riopelle, who was just back from France, from Paris, for the birth of his first child with his wife. And at an evening at a literary evening at Madame Gauvreau's place, he asked me what I had done recently since I had seen him last. So I told him about the film at Les Escoumins and that I wanted to do one in the snow. And so spontaneously, he said, come tomorrow since he had rented a little house at Otterburn Park near the Mount Saint-Hilaire. And I thought, oh, this is so fast, I'm not ready, how can I do it? And I can't miss that. So I packed something and took the bus the next day and arrived at his place. And it happened that Maurice Perron, the photographer of the group, was there. And the next morning we all went in the country searching towards Mount Saint-Hilaire for a place for me to dance. The snow in some places was beautiful, in some other places it was very rugged with thick icy spikes and hills, and I just thought that would be exciting to confront these things. So it was my immediate rapport with the landscape, improvising according to what was happening. Those were decisions taken on the spot and in the moment. And it lasted all day. It got a little bit dark, and suddenly we felt cold. After the whole day we hadn't felt it. And we looked at each other and we were so happy. We felt that something extraordinary had happened. 1948 was a fabulous year. I had a studio in Montreal that I had used to create dances and to teach some modern dance to some students. So I had created a few dances and thought that maybe it is the time to show them, to perform them in front of people. And it happened in one of my choreographies was for two dancers. And Jean Renaud also happened to be coming back from New York to Montreal for a few months before leaving for Paris with her husband. So I asked her if she would like to join me and perform faire un spectacle. It seemed that we would be ready at the beginning of April. And suddenly, everybody in the little group that we had wanted to participate. Jean Paul Mousseau wanted to make costumes. And he arranged a stage in the space that we had. The space, I must say, was a mansion that had been abandoned more or less for a while, and that would later, 2 years later, would become the law faculty for McGill. And during this period, I had my studio there. And in one of the long spaces of this house, he created a stage, and we found chairs for the public. And Jean Paul Riopelle decided to look after the lighting. Maurice took some photographs, Maurice Perron. This was at the same time as we were preparing what would become the manifesto, the Refus Global, which would appear publicly on August 9th. So 1948 was a very interesting year. had 4 little children, and I had to do something that didn't take me away from home so much. So I started doing sculpture, which I did throughout the 60s. The 60s was a period also in the art world of many new ideas coming up. And the ideas that we had in painting were challenged. I was very troubled by the thinking, the literary articles that were coming out in art magazines, where they were going as far as saying that art is no longer interesting, we're not doing anything, we don't want museums anymore. And I thought, what do we see? What is there if there's no art? And I thought, I will take a walk from one museum to another. I will walk there and take a photograph from one place to the other and see what we can see if there's no place for art. But I took a photograph without any aesthetic decisions at every corner of the street as I was walking from one museum to the other. And I did the same on the way back. And this, strangely enough, has become a work, an important work. Martine Époque, the leader of that group, asked me to do a choreography for the works, which was what we called hierophanie. And I had worked with Paul-André Fortier, Ginette Lorrain, Michel Fèvre, Danielle Soulière, and Danielle Léveillé. What a fantastic group. They all became choreographers of their own, had their own companies. I was very lucky.